Hi everybody, welcome back for another wonderful LocaCarnivore video. I'm your host, as always, Nigel, the slightly better than average ninja. And today we're going to talk about the Springfield Armory RONIN 10mm semi-automatic 1911 pistol. Hey, just before I get going here, I wanted to mention, remember, subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. And it's the best way for you to get more of our videos and to not miss a single one. Remember, when you subscribe, give us a big like on that thumbs up, and also click that little bell so you can get notifications whenever our new videos come out. That way you won't miss anything. This is episode 1 of a multi-part series on the RONIN 10mm. We gave it a very thorough workout with different types of ammunition over an extended period of time, and we're going to share that with you. But it has to be installments, otherwise the video would be stupidly long. So why did we get the RONIN 10mm in 1911? Well, first of all, I'm a sucker for 1911s. I used to have quite a few of them, but over time, stupidly got rid of most of them. We now have a few more in inventory. But the primary reason we got the RONIN 10mm is because we wanted to have a 10mm in stock. I haven't had a 10mm in, probably over a decade and a half. It just got too hard to feed the thing back in the dark ages before suddenly everybody discovered, hey, there's a 10mm out there. It's kind of like suddenly everybody rediscovering there's a group called the Beatles out there or something. And now the 10's the going thing. In fact, it's one of the hottest things out there. And rightly so. I love the cartridge. I always have loved the cartridge. But like I said, back in the day, it got too hard to feed, so I just gave them up. But I decided I wanted to get one because we're going to do a bunch of cartridge tests, ballistics tests for you over time with 10mm along, as well as other cartridges. And so I needed a gun, a platform to shoot it with. And I found this one, decided to pick it up. This is not a test and evaluation or T&E gun. We don't get any T&E guns here. The only support we get is via you going and supporting us at Patreon. So remember, there's a link down there for our Patreon site. We'd really appreciate your help on that. Also, there's a companion article for this video on our LocaCarnivore magazine website, and there's a link down there in the description as well. We'd appreciate it if you go over there. It's going to give you some more detail, and I think you're really going to enjoy that as a follow-on or a complimentary piece to the video. So we got this. It's not a T&E gun. We're not in the back pocket of any manufacturer, and we intend to stay that. We got to make a buck. If we don't, we can't keep doing this. It's that simple, which gets us back to go down to the link and look us up on Patreon and help us out if you want to. So the main reason we decided on the RONIN as opposed to any of the other 1911s out there, there's a bunch. Kimber, Rock Island, there's quite a few 1911s and 10mm on the market nowadays, is because of the barrel configuration and the feed ramp configuration in this gun. And I'm going to show that to you in just a second here. Okay, I took the gun apart off camera because apparently YouTube, according to some sources like Mr. Guns and Gear out there, claiming that, and rightly so, that YouTube apparently gets really upset if you show how to put a gun together, take it apart, or quote modify it or anything. So we're not modifying. This is a stock barrel, YouTube people out there. But I wanted to show you this barrel out of the gun because it's a little unique. Hopefully you can see this and it'll focus for you. I don't want to get too far out of my light, but this has a ramp built into the barrel chamber mouth here. The standard 1911, what John Browning designed back in, well, basically starting about 1905, 1903, and then became the 1911 pistol, it doesn't have this ramp built into the chamber mouth. It just goes flat, and what happens is the barrel, here's your frame feed ramp, and the barrel comes down as it's unlocked and being ready to feed. It just comes down and sits on that ramp right at the front of the frame. Here would be the magazine. The bullets would go up into here as the slide pushes them in as it goes forward. And basically the bullet has to go up one angle and then shift to a different angle at the throat, the actual mouth of the, it's got a bevel on it, the mouth of the chamber. And what happens is it basically has to do a kind of up and over kind of a thing, as opposed to just smoothly up one basic angle. So that's always been a problem for 1911s. They are notorious for being a little fussy on ammo, and rightly so. Most of them I've had have had loads they didn't like at all, especially in hollow points. So I wanted to make sure this thing would run hollow points. So Springfield Armory uses this fully, what they call a fully supported barrel, which also makes sure that the chamber fully supports the case head. I'm not going to put a live ammo in here to show you, but that makes it stronger for using with the high pressure, high power 10mm cartridge. Very good idea. And this is basically the idea that John Browning came up with the P35 high power, his last pistol design that he did before his death. And so this is kind of the way all modern guns are done. Glocks, just about anything produced afterwards has that type of feed ramp configuration. So that's why we did what we did, or why we bought the Ronin as opposed to any of the other 1911s out there. It's got this unified one-piece feed ramp. So that's why we got the Ronin. And by the way, it's pronounced Ronin in Japanese, not Ronin. A Ronin in medieval Japan, feudal Japan, was a samurai who did not have a liege lord whom he followed. He was just simply, in European terms, it'd be called knight errant, but without a lord, he was landless, homeless, and basically either hired himself out or did whatever he had to do, and I mean whatever he had to do in order to get by. Webster's Dictionary actually defines Ronin as a vagrant samurai, but I don't think that Springfield would have really liked anybody calling this the vagrant, so they came up with the Ronin. At any rate, language translation difficulties aside, we did want to test the gun, and that's why we got this particular gun, was for that ramp configuration, so that would feedback. So we took it out to the range for our first try with it, and we did not clean it. Our normal standards for testing a pistol that's designed as a fighting gun or as a self-defense gun here at LocaCarnivore is it's got to come right out of the box, factory lubrication, and it should run. That's our opinion. So that's how we do our initial tests. Sometimes if we have difficulties, we might go back, try a few things, clean it up, whatever, but we always tell you we've done that. But you can rest assured that the first test we do with any handgun or any other firearm is right out of the box with the factory setup the way it had it. We think that a combat handgun should run right out of the box. What did we shoot in our first episode? Well, we started with, I had some of this, and hopefully this will show up for you. Had some of this PMC, old PMC, 10mm. This is 200 grain full metal jacket. You can see how the old school box. This was purchased back in about 1989, 90, somewhere right around in there. And we'll reiterate that when we get out on the range. But I wanted you to see the box, see the ammo. It's just a should have got the stuntman for that. So you can see it's just a truncated cone full metal jacket slug on there. We also shot a few other rounds to test a different brand, and you'll see why once we get out on the range. And we tried some of this Buffalo Bore 220 grain hard cast lead. This is their super bear load. This is what everybody in Alaska, Montana, Idaho, anybody that's got grizzly bears in their backyard like we do around here, this is what you generally will put in your 10mm, unless of course you have an early Glock, which I don't like that cast lead. Here's a quick look at the Buffalo Bore. Hopefully you can see it. Hard cast lead, 220 grain. It's just truncated code design. Very flat metplet, as flat as they could get it without hopefully hurting the feeding capabilities. And that's the idea of that, is so that it really punches a really solid hole and flies straight through, well, the bear, let's be honest. The other round we tried was Buffalo Bore, is what they call their dangerous game load for the 10mm. and it is a 190 grain. You'll see as the video goes, I misspeak on the range session and call it a 195 grain. That's my mistake. But it's a 190 grain solid copper bullet from Lehigh Defense that Buffalo Boar developed with Lehigh. And this is a pretty good load. It's been tested. We're going to test it ourselves, but other people like Chicks Outdoors, Long Winding Road, etc., they've tested this round, and it seems to have one big advantage. It really drives in a very straight line through test media. It doesn't deviate much at all, which is what you want. Here's a look at the 190 grain solid copper Lehigh. Hopefully you can see that well. Autofocus isn't always your friend. Buffalo Boar rates the 190 grain at 1200 feet per second for about 600 foot-pounds of energy. And then they rate the 220 grain at, again, about 1200 feet per second, but the energy is north of 700 foot-pounds. So let's take it out to the range. Let's see how the Ronin 10mm 1911 by Springfield Armory handled its very first test with us. We're out on the range today with our Springfield Ronin 10mm. It's brand new to us. It's brand new out of the box. Gonna go a quick function test, and we're gonna see how she runs. We've got a Wilson Combat. Or this is the factory magazine, rather. It's the 8-round magazine. We're going to start with that. And then we also have a Wilson Combat 9-round magazine. We're going to try that out, see how that runs. And right now, the gun is empty. We're going to be using some old, and I mean old, PMC 200 grain full metal jacket. This stuff was bought back in, the very late 80s, maybe 90, 91, somewhere in there. So this is the old school stuff. Should be going out the door at about 1200 feet per second. We'll chronograph it in a little later video and see how that works. So let's get to it, see how this runs. We'll give it a try. Stovepipe that last round. Didn't feed it. Clean it off. This is the factory magazine. It was the last round of the mag. It doesn't want to do the last round in the mag. Try the Wilson Combat mag, see how that works. Doing great up to this point, quite accurate. There, that worked. Hung up again. Hung up on the ramp. Well, that's disappointing. Almost didn't go into battery. Same problem. Just keeps hanging up on the ramp. See if we can get this last one to go. This ammo might be so old it might be weak though. No, it's the gun. See that? Hanging up in the ramp. That's what it's doing on the last round, particularly. That's really disappointing. Try this again. Nope. Doesn't want to do it. Wow. Well, let's try something else. We got some more ammo. Okay. We decided to change ammo a bit. We've got some of this buffalo bore 220 grain hard cast lead nasties with the flat nose. Of course, the PMC gave this thing a hard time, this Springfield Ronin, but we're going to give it another go with different ammo. Maybe it's just the ammo. See if this hard cast runs. Not a problem with that. Okay, this time we're going to try some of this buffalo bore 195 grain Barnes copper solid, and we're going to see how that works. 220 grain hard cast lead ran real fine. It's definitely hot. You could really feel it smacking away at the grip on this thing. But let's give this a try, see if it'll feed correctly. Cleaned up the target out there a little bit, so we'll see fresh holes. Buffalo bore seemed a little bit not to group cut as well, but I was getting a little upset that the gun wasn't running right, so I wasn't really concentrating. See if we can do a little better now. There you have it. That ran. Welcome back to the studio. What did we learn here today with the Springfield Armory Ronin 10mm 1911? Well, basically, for one thing, we confirmed 1911s have a reputation for being finicky with ammo, and I think we proved that again here today. But if it's fed around that it likes, they are reliable and certainly a good gun. We also proved this particular gun absolutely hates that PMC ammo. Now, does it hate all PMC ammo? Not necessarily. It hates that particular full metal jacket load from that particular lot. And you have to remember that when you're doing these kinds of tests, different lots can perform in different ways. So you have to remember that. And each gun is unique. So especially with 1911s, they require a lot of hand fitting. They're not something you can just CNC out and have a bunch of people slap it together and ship it down the line like a lot of the polymer guns, which is an advantage of polymer guns. But these 1911s, they require a little finesse and a little knowledge when you put them together. And if you don't get them just exactly right, they can be finicky. Now this one seems to be good enough because it ran with the buffalo bore, and it ran with 2 different buffalo bore loads, which is a good sign. So it's not an unreliable gun per se, it just hates that particular PMC ammunition. And granted, it's also very old PMC ammunition. For all I know, the standards for the overall length of the cartridges and things like that have changed a bit over the decades for 10mm. There's such a wide variety of loadings and power levels on 10mm. That's a different subject for a different video. But it may be that that older ammunition just isn't up to what this gun was designed to run with when it was designed. You know, the gun came out not too long ago. It's designed to run with modern production 10mm ammunition. And that buffalo bore is modern production. We got it off the shelf just a week or 2 prior to doing the test. The other thing we learned about it is it's accurate. I mean, it shot those buffalo bore, and I wasn't, you know, Nigel, you know, out on the range, I wasn't trying very hard to be super accurate. I was more concerned with will the darn thing cycle the rounds. But even with me not paying particular attention to my marksmanship skills and technique, it still managed to keep all the rounds in a reasonably tight group at 7 yards. I mean, it was suitable for self-defense. The other thing, this particular gun, and perhaps the Ronin line from Springfield, it might require a little break-in. I mean, it's not unusual, especially in the 1911 world, for these guns to require a little break-in. Kimbers, for instance, are notorious for needing several hundred rounds before they come into their little sweet spot and start working reliably. Nothing against Kimber, but they do have that reputation in the industry. And yes, our standard is the gun should work right out of the box. No factory lubrication. There shouldn't be any issues. It should run right out of the box. And technically it did with the loads it likes. And with all guns, you have to experiment a little bit and find a load that definitely is reliable with the gun. And it's not too much to expect for a gun that was designed, I mean, the 1911 was designed 120 years ago, roughly. That's a long time. Technology has gone on since then. So this is an old design. It's a classic design, but it has its issues, and you have to learn to work with it. And we're going to give this gun the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, we trashed a Polymer 80 PFC-9 in a previous video series, and I'll give you a card up to there so you can go see that. Go take a look at it. But that gun, we held that to a higher standard. It's a modern polymer striker gun. It should work absolutely out of the box. 1911, we give them a little leeway. I mean, this is an old cranky critter. It's just an old warrior. It has its little features, and you have to learn to work within those features. If you learn to work with it and understand its little idiosyncrasies, 1911 is an excellent pistol. Frankly, we think the gun deserves a second chance. We even gave that P80, Polymer 80 PFC-9 a second chance. You'll recall, I think everything deserves a second chance. So we're going to continue to work with this. We've got a series of videos that we're going to be bringing out for you with this Ronin 10mm, this particular gun. And we'll see, does it get better over time as the round count increases? Was that the issue? We're going to try a different, wide variety of bullet styles and ammunition types and different loads, different velocity and power levels. And we're going to see where this gun works and where it doesn't. We're going to be fully honest with you, and you're going to see every bit of it. So thanks for watching. Make sure, again, you go down and subscribe, you like, you join us on Patreon, and ring that little notification bell. And we will see you later for episode 2 of the Ronin 10mm saga.